All right, well, I'm going to continue what I started last Sunday. But before I do, well, Dan, would you want to pray just to start us off?
Thank you again, Lord, for being with us here this wonderful family. Thank you for all the children that are here too. Saying, we thank you for your love and kindness to us. We thank you for the gorgeous weather outside. Just thank you for this day. We ask that you would bless your word to us today through it. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. All right, well, so last Sunday I started, what is true worship? Lots of times we look at worship in a completely different way than we should, and we'll tie it to a specific thing, where lots of that is music nowadays. We feel that we're worshiping, but as I taught last Sunday, that using Cain and Abel, it has to do with coming to God His way, not our way. There has to be a mediator between man and God, which is Jesus Christ. And only when we know Him and we're born again, we can truly worship the Father, whether that is through music, through ministry, whatever it might be. But so I did a teaching on what is true worship last Sunday. So if you weren't here, you missed that one, you want to go online and listen to that for this one to make sense. So today I'm going to teach on religion versus worship. And I have received a lot of pain in my life from this teaching that I'm doing today. And it's like one of the man's biggest enemy is religion, ever since Jesus went to the cross. And I know to some that might sound like, what are you talking about, Abe? But as I go on, it'll start making sense. So in John 4:24, we read, God is spirit, and His worshipers must worship Him in spirit and in truth. And that's what I taught last Sunday. That's how you worship God. Only if you have His Spirit living within you. You have surrendered your life to Him. It's the only way you can worship God. If you try to come in any other way, like Cain did, He will reject your worship. So, when you don't have worship God's way, that's where religion is born. And religion literally has been man's enemy since Jesus went to the cross and paid for everything to free us from the bondage of religion. Jesus came to free us from traditions of men, which can keep us in chains, but yet man will choose religious tradition if he doesn't have the Spirit, because man cannot go without worshiping. Remember my teaching last Sunday, when you pinpoint why we are here to worship God. But that worship was broken when Adam and Eve sinned in the garden. So, if we do not worship God the way He wants us to worship Him, we will find another way to worship. We'll worship something, whether it's truth or just a flat-out lie. And like I said, that is where religion is born. We find all sorts of different religions throughout all of the world. And the teaching that I mentioned last Sunday already, a lot of this is coming from A.W. Tozer. I want to give him the credit for that. And this, he wrote down in the teaching too, in India, there's a goddess Ganga they have. It's the Ganges River. They believe that it cleanses. It has the power to cleanse. Yet, it is the dirtiest, filthiest river on the face of the earth. So their religion says, step into the river, fall face forward into the water, then pinpoint where your face fell, and then do it over. And these guys will do it for miles because they believe that this will cleanse them. And like A.W. Tozer says, really all it does is create a lot of hurt, because when you get out of the river, you're actually dirtier than when you walked in, right? So that is what religion will do. This is a very big example, but I will get more personal later on. We see the Israelites also, they went to worship a calf, like pretty much instantly. They went to worship a golden calf that they had made with their own hands. We see men today, even today, worship creation itself, which I really strongly spoke on last Sunday. But religion has made some religions to where when the sun comes up in the morning, you have to bow down to the sun and pray to the sun. When it goes down in the evening or whatever. We've seen a whole highway get shut down in eastern part of Canada because of religion, right? People stopping on the middle of the freeway praying. There's nothing wrong with prayer, but you see what religious rules put in place. Something that makes no sense, right? Because man is not actually worshiping God through his spirit. He has made his own way to worship God, which is through creation. And creation is not something we worship. If our worship is not directed in the right way, we will fall. Our worship has to be in spirit and in truth. So John 6, or John 4, verses 21 through 23 says, is the woman at the well, where Jesus is talking to her. Woman, Jesus replied, believe me, and a time is coming when you will worship the Father neither on this mountain nor in Jerusalem. You Samaritans worship what you do not know. We worship what we do know, for our salvation is from the Jews. Yet a time is coming, and has now come, when true worshippers will worship the Father in spirit and in truth, for they are the kind of worshipper the Father seeks. See, she had just asked, where do we worship? Because we have a mountain here we're supposed to go worship, but yet you guys say we worship in Jerusalem. And then this is the reply to her from Jesus. And that's what I really want to push out. What religion will do, they will say you must do this or you must do that. And Jesus made it very clear to her that it ain't going to matter or it already doesn't, where you worship. And he says, or that mountain, it ain't going to matter, because God's deity is not a mountain. It is not the Ganges River. That's not God. So what Jesus is telling her, we have to come to him in spirit and truth, because that's who God is. He is spirit. If his deity was a mountain or a river, then it would make sense for us to go to a certain mountain or to a certain river, but it is not. Creation is designed to point us to God, not to worship it. Right? But that's what religion will do. God is spirit. He has known no place or time. He is everywhere, just like Jesus said. So man will take this and they will say, we need a place and we need a time to worship God, which can give you feelings to make you feel holier, right? Just like Cain, he would have been, like I said last Sunday, he would have been doing his best to pick the best fruits from the ground and gather all the best things he could for the Lord and say, look at what I've done for you, right? So that's something man will do. They will take time, place, and then religion is formed. You must pray this or you must pray that there or in that time, or God won't hear you. We'll start going down these religious paths that just forms, you must do this and you must do that. It can also, people might think, if I go to Jerusalem, I'm closer to Jesus than I am right here, right? But God is not bound to time or space. He is everywhere all the time. So if you can't worship him here this morning, then you won't be able to worship him in Jerusalem. And place is very big, especially where we come from. Someone would say that this place we're all gathering out here this morning is green. That's not a church. What are you guys doing, right? Because they have made a place their worship. There's nothing wrong with a place. Places are good. We need them to protect us from the weather, but if it must be this or must be that, we're worshiping the place instead of the Creator. Some religions go to worshiping different types of food to be holier. God is spirit. Remember, those that worship have to worship in spirit and in truth. Because God is spirit, we can't come to him with different things and say, we're worshiping you with these things, because he is spirit. He is not food. He is not mountain. He is not river. He is spirit, and he wants us to worship him in spirit and in truth. Not things he created. I have a passage I want to read to you guys. It's in Colossians 2, verses 16 through 23. And this really set me free from a lot of rules. This passage right here really set me free because I was bound to rules. Man-made rules that I would try and keep to be right with God, which made me a worshiper of the rules instead of God, right? Therefore, the passage says, do not let anyone judge you by what you eat or drink, or with regard to religious festivals, a new moon celebration, or a Sabbath day. These are shadows of the things that were to come. The reality, however, is found in Christ. And that's what I'm pointing to. All these things were created to point to the one that is truth. Do not let anyone who delights in false humility and worship of angels disqualify you. Such a person also goes into great detail about what they have seen. They are puffed up with idol nations by their unspiritual mind. They have lost connection with the head, from whom the whole body supports and is held together by the ligaments and sinews, grows as God causes it to grow. Since you died with Christ to elemental spiritual forces of this world, why, as though you still belong to this world, do you submit to rules? So, after Christ has freed you, set you free, he's asking, why do we still submit to the rules that belong to the world? Such as do not handle, do not taste, do not touch. These rules, which have to do with things that are all destined to perish with use, are based on merely human commands and teachings. So all these things, do not handle, do not taste, do not touch, are all based on human rules and connections. And they will all perish. Such regulations indeed have an appearance of wisdom. They seem to be very powerful, because with their self-imposed worship, their false humility, and their harsh treatment of the body, but they lack any value of restraining sensual indulgence, which means, that it might be powerful because we're putting our body through these things that we have to do in order to be worshiping the Lord, but they don't deal with what's in here, the heart. They have no effect on the heart. That's why we can't worship all these things, because at the end of the day, that will all perish. It won't mean anything. That's why the Spirit who now lives within us is the only way to the Father. So, as I said, this place where we're worshiping in, a lot of people would say, this isn't a church. Well, the thing is, this building isn't the church anyway. We, the people, are the church. We're just gathering here. We can go to the park in Ponteix next week and have church there. That's church. And if we look at the apostles in Jesus' day, they thought going to the temple was so holy. Jesus already knew that they were worshiping this holy temple, and he said to them, it's all going to crumble. There won't be one rock left on one of another, which was fulfilled in 70 AD. That whole temple was destroyed. Times. God is not limited by time. He is not in time. There isn't a certain time you have to worship, or a better time to worship him. He is, well, you could say time itself. He is everywhere, all the time, anywhere. If he was limited to time, then we would all be sitting and waiting for 6 o'clock to roll around, because that's the only time we can worship God, right? So it's very important. Like, religion will also put that on. There's certain times, like I was saying already, when the sun comes up. If we look at, if Jesus would have stayed here, he said, I must go to heaven so I can send the Holy Spirit. If he would have stayed here, then we would be bound to time. Right?
Right. And places.
Yeah, and places. Because then he would probably have a place in Jerusalem, I would imagine. And then we would all have to go to Jerusalem. We would all have to have different times we could go, because we couldn't all go at once, right, to see him. But that's why he said, I have to go to heaven, so that the Spirit can come down and be with you guys everywhere, all the time, And that's the only way to the Father, is through the Spirit. That's why we must be born again. All these things, like places, times, food, creation, the moon, the stars, animals, they are not holy. They all point to the one who is holy. Right? So really look at that. It's so easy to get caught up in these things and not even realize what you're doing. That's what religion will do to you. And here at the Quonset, like I've said, we need to have like flags hanging off the wall and write down all these things that we used to be bound to remember that we won't go back to religion. Galatians 5:1, do not go back to what you were bought out of, right? Bondage. See, true worship is internal. It's not external. It's not things we do. Things we worship, we become slaves to. Churches, time, prayer, music, food, places, money, even your wife. You can start worshiping your wife or your girlfriend, whatever. We've seen that from Scott. He was here speaking last year, how he had started worshiping his wife. He could not be anywhere without her. She had to be everywhere he was because he was scared that he might lose her. And it put so much pressure on her because she's not Jesus. It hurt her greatly, and he wasn't even realizing how much he was hurting her. But she was the center of his life. He was worshiping God's creation, which was his wife. You have, like, and you see what I'm saying? Like, so easy to get caught up in these things. And this is really cool. I really like this. We have to learn how to use these things, like places, time, your wife, food. They are not our servants. God didn't create them to be our servants. But yet, when we do all these things, they are. Like, I might have said that backwards. We are not made for them to be our servants. We are supposed to be their master. Right? They become our servants. All these things, like this place we gather here, we have to make it our servant. Food, just like mom, she's not worshiping food this morning by using it for Dan and Ronnie's leaving go-away party. She's using the food as a servant to serve, right? I think that's like just mind-boggling to me. That really helped me understand that we have to make these things under us. They are our servants. And that's exactly what Jesus said the Sabbath was created for. Sabbath was made for men so that they could rest. They could use it to do spiritual things, to refresh themselves, to, pretty much reset yourself. But if you make it the other way around, well, then you're all of a sudden the Sabbath servant. Then you have to do everything it says, just like the Pharisees in the New Testament. Look at all the rules they made because of the Sabbath day. And the Sabbath day, just like I read to you guys in Colossians, they are foreshadows of what was to come, Jesus. The Sabbath day is a foreshadow of the day of rest. The day you accept Jesus Christ as Lord and Savior, you come into the day of rest. That's the meaning of the day of Sabbath. It's a spiritual meaning. They're all the new moon, festivals, all these things are foreshadows of what was to come. And it says Jesus. They all point to Jesus. Why is all this so important? Because God is a jealous God. And He does not want us to worship anything other than Him. And if you do, back to Cain, He will not accept your worship. See, and we see also here in Romans 1 verses 20 through 22. For since the creation of the world, God's invisible qualities, His eternal power and divine nature, have been clearly seen, being understood from what has been made, so that people are without excuse. For although they knew God, they neither glorified Him as God nor gave thanks to Him, but their thinking became futile and their foolish hearts were darkened. Although they claimed to be wise, they were fools, and exchanged the glory of the immortal God for images made to look like mortal human beings and birds and animals and reptiles. See, they refuse to acknowledge that God is the creator of all these things. So they start worshiping creation, and I won't read the rest of this, but God turns them over to a reprobate mind because they refuse to acknowledge that He is God. That's why this is all so important, because religion will make you worship places, time, foods, creation, money. If you do this with your money, then you'll, if you help that and that person, those are all good things. But if you're doing it to be right with God, you're worshiping in the wrong way. So I want to share some personal stuff with you guys that I've went through in my life, and why I find this is so important, this teaching. Like I said to you guys, last Sunday and this Sunday is probably going to be the most important teachings I'll ever do, because if you don't get this, you will not end up where you think you'll end up. So religion can use things that are very close to the truth to mislead you. So the things we kind of talked about here, they are outright very visible. Okay, this is wrong, right? We see that we don't go bow down to a thing or something somewhere on the hill and worship that thing. We just see that times, places, foods, even though it might have a little bit to do with where we come out of. I know places was a big thing for the old older Mennonites, but we see that it's an outright lie, right? No, this is wrong, this is right. But then religion can get very close to the truth and yet not be the truth, which is very dangerous. You might think, well, most of it lines up with the truth, but if you don't know absolute truth, you can be misled. So the absolute truth, the only way to get to God is through the Spirit, right? If you don't know that truth, and religion comes along and tells you partial truths, you will be misled because you don't know absolute truth. Then you can't say, no, this doesn't line up with what God says. This is the only way to worship me. So A.W. Tozer says again in this teaching, he says it's like adding water to poison. It's mostly water, but the thing is, it's not the water that kills, it's the poison. Right? So I know thinking like that sometimes from all the background I came out of, I was like, well, the preaching is like 90% truth, right? But it's what you don't know that kills you. That's why it's so dangerous. The closer you are to truth, the more damage it does and the more dangerous it is. So when it's an outright lie, you can say, no, that is wrong. I'm not going down that road. But if it's so close to truth that you can't tell the difference, it gets very dangerous. Most religions have a lot of truth, and that's why they are so dangerous. When you know that something is an outright lie, you can tell what's truth and stay away. Satan didn't outright lie to Eve in the garden. You guys ever thought of that? You think if Satan would have told Eve everything that was going to happen after she took a bite, she would have took a bite? That's why religion is so dangerous. He told her partial truths to mislead her. It's what he did not tell her that led her to do what she did, and that's what led all of this chaos that we are living in today. So it's what people did not tell me when I was growing up that has hurt me like crazy in my life. This is my own personal story. In my life, I was taught all about Jesus all the time. He was there all the time. But I was taught the only way to get right with God was through baptism. So guess what I did? I did everything possible to make it to baptism. I still remember, like when I was in jail and going through all the crazy things I was going through, I would sit there and tell myself, as long as I don't die before I get baptized, I'll be good. That's what religion did to me, right? So finally, we get to the day where I get baptized, and I get baptized and think, now I'm right with God, right? I was putting my faith in the baptism instead of the only way to worship is through spirit and truth, which God says. This is the only way you can come to me because you guys are sinful. You need a mediator, which is Jesus Christ, right? He went up to heaven, sent the Spirit back down. That's why we must be born again, to have the Spirit. But I was taking baptism as the way to the Father. And baptism is a symbol of you accepting the true worship. See, it's what they did not tell me that led me to worship baptism, not Jesus Christ, who is the way, the truth, and the life. So guess what would have happened if I would have died? I'd be in hell. Because of religion.
Just to clarify, you're saying even after you were baptized?
Even after I was baptized. Because I put my trust, I was worshiping baptism without knowing it. I just thought this is what we need to do to get right with God. Yes, we need to give our life to Christ. We need to accept His way, which is only through Jesus' sacrifice on the cross. And when we accept that, we receive the Spirit to where we have that connection gets restored that was broken in the Garden of Eden. So I didn't have that though, and I didn't know it. So religion really misled me by misrepresenting the truth. And if you listen to the sermons, 95% of what you would listen to would be right. Maybe even more. Right? But this is the crazy thing. This is what hurt me so much, is to realize that these churches are sitting full of people worshiping things, and they do not know. What's the worst thing about being deceived? You don't know that you are. So just to put this into everyday life perspective, A.W. Tozer has another story that he added to this of a tiger. We could go to the local zoo and look at a tiger laying there before us, licking itself like a big kitten. We could tell ourselves, perhaps it's playful. Or in a playful mood. And then I can say, this tiger's not dangerous. It's just a big kitty. I can declaw him. The partial truth does not change the nature of the tiger. It is still the most efficient killing machine on planet Earth. And if I were to approach this tiger only knowing partial truth, what happens? You're taco. It's what I did not know that put me in a lot of danger. But here's the crazy thing. I'd be better off going into that tiger pen and letting that tiger kill me, because then religion versus worship, right? Because it can only kill my flesh. It can't kill my spirit. I'll still end up in heaven. But the spiritual side of this is different. If you are worshiping something God has not made to worship, when that tiger kills you spiritually, you're done for eternity. It's forever. And that's why religion is so dangerous. No matter how close it is to the truth, if it ain't absolute truth, it is far more dangerous than anything else. Because just think of what Satan did with Eve in the garden. Remember, Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life. No one will come to the Father except through him. Do not worship anything other than him and him alone. Really look at your life. One thing that really opened my eyes, this personal testimony, was a pastor that I reached out to when I was going through, should I stay with religion or should I go? Because this is where the help is needed, not there. I said to myself, I have to stay here. And I seen the danger of staying there. And he said to me, Abe, where you're at, the truth is being preached 99%. It's a very, very dangerous place to be. And he put it into this perspective. He said, if a Boeing 747 plane takes off and it's going across the world, if it is out by 2 degrees, it will not land where it's supposed to land. On a jet like that, from here all the way across the world, 2 degrees is hundreds of miles from where it's supposed to land. Hundreds. And he started really letting me see, even though I have the truth now, I can understand that all this is false, I want to help, but what am I putting my kids? My kids are exposed to this partial truth all the time. And I'm not drawing a line and saying, no, enough is enough. I'm not playing this game, right? There has to come a time in our life where we either say, I'm following Jesus, or Jesus plus something, right? And that's where I drew the line because of what the Word of God says, and also to protect my family from being exposed to 1%, which is way more dangerous than if it was 50% non-truth. Because then you could say, this is not right, this is. But that's the hurt I have received in my own life, is just building on baptism to save me and not realizing that I was not worshiping God the way He wanted me to come to Him, which is only through Jesus Christ, not through baptism. And it really, really hurt me greatly because I started seeing how many chains were actually holding me down from being free. And these guys that are falling body length in the Ganges River, those chains are holding these people down just because they don't know absolute truth. And they're doing things that make no sense and thinking it's going to be okay one day when they die. Say it again. I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one will come to the Father except through me. That is true worship. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.